Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our next episode. This is Aryeh Eisenberg from Edu-Together, and we're happy to have you. I am thrilled to welcome Cassie Jones as our guest for this episode. Cassie is the head of school of the Epiphany School in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Cassie, it's so nice to have you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share a little bit about what we do here and how it could inspire some other educators to think differently about educating the neurodiverse brain.
Amazing. I have to say, when I first heard about your school and I learned about what you're doing, I was so inspired. And it's so amazing for me to be able to go from hearing about what you do to seeing some examples to actually getting the opportunity to talk with you. So thank you so much for taking the time. And let's start off, if you could, give us a little bit of overview of what makes the Epiphany School such a special learning center.
Yeah, I would love to. So similarly to you, I was really inspired by the fact that Epiphany exists. So Epiphany is a micro school, meaning that we have around 30 students that we serve in grades 3 through 8. So we joke that we're the best kept secret in Charlotte because we're so small. And so when we think about our reach and we think about who we're serving, we love to tell people about what we do and to have the opportunity to do that. So I was actually teaching in a neurotypical school, and I was continually drawn to those kiddos that think a little and process a little bit differently. And so I was speaking with a local psychologist who had a client and overlapped with a student of mine. And I said to him, is there anywhere where school isn't awful for the neurodiverse brain?
Oh, wow.
And he
Good question.
said, yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, and I didn't think there was an answer. It was more rhetorical. And I thought, oh, I'm making conversation. And he said, yes, there is. He said, let me show you. And so during that journey of meeting with that psychologist and supporting that child in a neurotypical setting, I came to hear about the Epiphany School. And when I came on campus and saw what is done here and how different school feels, I knew that at some point I was going to be a part of the magic here. And so the
Mm.
biggest part that feels different is because we're so small, we're able to be super relational with our kids. So we feel like a family, we feel like a team. That sense of team and family really permeates what we do. And we know that forward motion with kids comes from relationship and them knowing that you're not just kind of tolerating them, that you care for them. We care for
So
our
special.
families. It,
Wow.
it is, yeah. So from there, it feels different in a lot of different ways, which I'm sure we'll get into. But it kind of started for me in a search for where can someone that processes and thinks and learns differently have a space that feels comfortable for them. And so this is where that is. So that's kind of how I
Wow.
hear what feels different to me about Epiphany. And I'm excited to share the kind of specifics of what that looks like, but it all starts with that relationship, which is the
Uh,
most important part of being with
uh,
kids. So
yeah, I was gonna say, I think your students are so lucky in any case to have that type of personalized relationship, and especially to be able to give back to these students and to make them comfortable where, like you said before, they probably weren't, or they probably were not succeeding and thriving in the same way in their original environments. That's really a special thing to be able to do. What types of students, like what makes a student eligible to be a student at the Epiphany School? What are there certain criteria that each student has to have when they apply?
yeah. So what we say is that you don't have to have any formal diagnosis to apply, but we tend to serve students that have autism spectrum disorder level 1 and or ADHD and or anxiety and or depression, but just
Wow.
overall students that process and think through things differently. So you don't have to have that diagnosis to be here, but the crux and the criteria kind of hinges upon that lagging social skill. So when I think about being really great at basketball, I have to practice. It doesn't come naturally to me. And
Sure.
I'm going to have to try a lot harder and get more specific instruction than, say, the person next door who's naturally good at basketball and acquired the skills naturally. So we kind of say the same thing for our students. They typically come to us because there's a lagging social skill that's causing them to not be successful in their current environment. And so what that looks like is, that ASD brain often will have a very rigid set of thinking patterns and rules. And when their peers aren't going along with that same thought pattern, it dysregulates our kiddos. And so even though they're seeking to form relationships and have relationships and really want to have those, they just don't have the skills necessary to connect the dots and to make it happen. And so the majority of our families come to us saying, hey, my kid is unfortunately mistreated, marginalized, misunderstood
Hmm.
by their peers, but also a lot of times by the schools that they're being served in. And that can lead to behaviors, that can lead to, isolation from peers. And so when they come here, often they're saying, okay, listen, school's just not working. And we have this really smart kid who loved school until second grade, and then the wheels just started falling off the bus. So what do we do? So here at Epiphany, what we do is we teach those social skills and we practice
Hmm.
those social skills and repeatedly. So when we think about, self-management is where we start. So what does it mean
Okay.
to understand who you are and how you process things, and who am I and how do I think differently? And how does that person think differently? And so those skills are taught, and as they're going throughout their day, as they're in language arts, math, science, social studies, and those opportunities for teachable moments come up, because we're so
Mm.
small, we are able to say and step in and say, hey, this is a moment in which we're going to need to name it to tame it, say, like we need to name our emotions so that we can tame it. Like you can have control over that, right?
Nice.
So those skills are taught specifically, and then they're hammered in throughout the day, so that they can become a part of what their practice then becomes what they're doing naturally.
So wow, it sounds like an incredible environment for your students. I'm curious. Obviously, you mentioned some of the subjects that the students are taking, the math and the science and all the normal academic subjects. What other staff members do you have on board in order to be able to provide all of these services? I imagine you must have a lot of additional support staff and special education teachers. How does that work, especially in such a small school?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as with any place, staffing is the most important thing that we do. So finding
Sure.
people that are passionate about our kiddos, and how their brains work is my most important job. And so as I'm going through interview processes with potential employees, the biggest thing that I say to them is that I want you to care about our kids. I want you to find them funny. We are not just putting up with our kiddos. We are making sure that we are people that are in this space for a reason. That we find their quirks and their uniqueness funny and joyful, and we encourage that in them. We're not trying to change them.
That's so nice.
So yeah, so when we think about the kind of background and the training that we would have with these folks, that's always my number one. We also have, obviously, we have full-time teachers with special education backgrounds, and we have an SEL director who leads
Wow.
this space called our reset room. And our reset room is available at any time for the kiddos to, we say, reset, re-regulate, and release back into the classroom. It's not a punishment, it's a strategy. We know that when we get overwhelmed, we sometimes need that break and we need a minute. So
That
our
that could be
SEL
something good for all schools.
all of us,
I think we all need that from time to time. So that's great.
100%. And what's sometimes difficult and what's a shift in a paradigm here is that it's not a punishment. And so
Right.
taking a break is not something that we look down upon. It's not, oh, you're getting sent to the principal's office. It's, hey, I'm noticing that you're not engaging in this lesson because whatever it is, because you don't know how to do it, because you're mad at the person next to you, because you had a bad morning, whatever it is, that you're not able to engage right now. So let's take a break. And yes, that skill is something that we are able to do as adults. If I am feeling dysregulated for whatever reason, I don't have to ask someone if I can go to the bathroom. I don't have to
Right.
ask, can I get up and take a break? I don't have to ask, can I even wiggle in my chair? I can just do those things, but we expect our kiddos in a typical educational setting, oftentimes, not always, to follow sets of rules that we don't even ask of from ourselves. So I completely agree. I think this would, and I've heard of other schools doing it. I think that the goal though is to make sure that it's a skill building moment and it's not a punishment. You know,
Wow.
I've also heard of reset rooms being janitorial closets. I've heard of them being, the space needs to be inviting and warm
Sure.
and monitored by a professional. We also have a school counselor who leads our
Okay.
trademark friends and feelings class, which is a social skills class that they have every day, just like they have science, language, arts, reading. So
Fantastic. Wow.
whatever thing.
You know, as you describe what you're doing, I think back to sometimes as parents, as adults, as teachers, we often all of us sometimes have a tendency to get frustrated and to kind of say, I'm not doing this or to say something we shouldn't or what have you. And it's so interesting because one of the things I read on your website, which really made me stop and think, you have a line that I really love. It says private school for extraordinary students.
Mm,
And I thought about this for a second. And as you're describing what you're doing, your students really are extraordinary because here's a challenge. And I would imagine, I'm interested to know if you would agree with this. Like, I think we all have some of these challenges in us, whether it be the social or the attention or what have you. And these students have a little bit more of a challenging time, yet here they are being provided a mainstream education, being really expected to perform the way every other student in the system would be expected. Yet they have these extra challenges. Yet here they are able to do all these amazing things, and I think that really does make them extraordinary students. And that tagline really made me stop and think.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I am completely of the mindset that we all are extraordinary in some way, and to focus on your deficit rather than
Yeah,
what makes you extraordinary and makes you unique and makes you you, of course would cause you to not want to go to school. Of course, it would cause you to not feel confident and not want to engage. And so when I think about absolutely. What is your unique gift? We're not trying to change who you are. We're trying to grow that extraordinariness, grow that uniqueness, and giving you the skills necessary to, we say, to thrive, not survive, right? Like we can
I
get
like that.
through school, right? We can probably get through school, but can we do it without being miserable? And it goes back to that original question that I had at the psychologist of, is there anywhere where it's not awful for the neurodiverse brain? Middle school
Well,
stinks anyway.
well,
Like middle school usually stinks. Um, how do we make it less terrible? How do we make
less
it?
terrible. There we.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, look, I can relate a little bit because a lot of the students who come to Edu-Together to our online school are also students who really were being ostracized or who were having really terrible social challenges in the mainstream school system, and many of our students have ADHD or other learning issues that make it a little bit more challenging. But I think we found also, like you said, that it's about playing to these students' strengths. I know we have one student who, if you ask him to take out a piece of paper and write a paragraph, he could not do it. He just doesn't have the attention. But if you ask him to pick up his guitar or sit in front of his piano and write a song, then all of a sudden he's writing the next masterpiece. And I think you're so right about giving the students that outlet to develop their skills and to develop their strengths. And I think that's so important as educators that we're doing that. And it's amazing that you're doing it at your school. I'm always kind of sad that it's not being done more in the mainstream system. And I think
Yeah.
that's a challenge. Um,
Well,
you know,
and I will say that I agree, and it's really hard to do that. It's hard to say, oh my gosh, we need to make sure we hit these standards. We need to make sure that this child knows how to form a paragraph, have an intro, sentence, conclusion. And and this kiddo would be able to really engage with a guitar lesson. How do you marry those two things?
yeah,
And how are you as an educator curious about catering to the strength so that you can creatively get to those standards that do need to be taught? And often, I think it's fantastic when you can find a way to, hey, with our math facts, we're going to use the guitar and we're going to, whatever it may be, you have this epiphany, right? Like you have this great idea as an educator. Often too, though, it's chunking things in little goals. So I know that this kiddo would love to use the guitar. That's not anything to do with what we're learning. And I can't figure
right,
out a way to make it fit in this lesson. And maybe it's even distracting for this other kid. But how do I create these small incentives that do allow for excitement, or at least the ability to engage in whatever it is that you're wanting to engage in? Can you be flexible, maybe not during the lesson, but can you be flexible for 5 minutes at the end? And can you say,
right.
if you do this, then we can do this thing. And I would love to hear it. I would love for you to show me that guitar lesson. And what I'm interested in is this paragraph. You know what I mean? So I think that
Well,
educators think about that a lot. Like, how is that even possible? How could that sounds great in theory, but how am I actually going to do that? And so that's kind of where
right.
my mind goes with, yeah, I hear you. It's really hard to
So
differentiate and to let all the kids do what they're wanting. That's not what works. But how do you make it work is
how
sometimes,
did yeah. I mean, I think it's all about and I think that's where the flexibility and the dedication of those teachers comes in, and really being able to take a diverse classroom and make it work on a daily basis, and it's no small feat as they say, and I'm sure your teachers are amazing at what they
yeah.
do, and the students sound very lucky to have them. What age groups or grades does the Epiphany School service?
So the Epiphany School is grades 3 through 8. So
Okay,
the kind of thought behind that is, I was kind of mentioning this before, but to close the loop, most of the time, because our students are at or above grade level, and before second grade, we're all I-centered, right? Like we are all thinking about
very
only
true.
ourselves. And so
Mhm.
around second or third grade, when you start to get peer consequence and you start to, as a neurotypical brain, start to notice and wonder like, oh, when I do this, my peers don't like that. And so you stop doing it. Usually around that second or third grade is when our students are like, it's just not going well for me anymore. And then the eighth grade piece, ending in eighth grade, allows us to practice the skills that we learned in the next environment and within the context of, I'm still living at home. And so it gives our kids the opportunity to say, all right, I'm taking those skills that I learned at Epiphany, and then I'm transitioning them into this next place and space.
Mm.
And I'm again practicing, but in a different environment, these social skills.
I'm curious, like on the same theme, like when the students graduate from the Epiphany School after eighth grade, do you hear from them, throughout high school to see how things are going, and do you find that the skills and the lessons you've been able to instill in them are do you see them being utilized by the students on their own?
Yeah, that's a great question. And during the admissions process, that's what every single curious parent asks.
Oh yeah,
Like, does it work? If we come here and we do all the things, does it work? And I'm so happy to say that of course nothing is perfect. Of course it's not magic, And it kind of is. And we do hear from our alumni that that these practiced skills, particularly for the kiddos that we have for, third through eighth grade or even fourth through eighth grade, it's been practiced so much in this safe space that when they're then back to where they were before, or they're in another small school environment, yeah, we do hear that there's success there, and that
It's
it's
great.
been life-changing for a lot of our families, which helps you to get up and keep doing what you're doing every day. You know what I mean? Like it works.
Absolutely.
So
Amazing to hear. What would you say when working with a student, a student comes into your school third grade and stays with you all the way through, you've spoken a lot about the successes that you've had and about the amazing programs that you run. What do you think is one of the bigger challenges that you guys face? Obviously the different learning issues and the might be there, but a little bit more deeper, like what are some of the things that you find yourselves even as professional and experienced educators that aren't always so easy to deal with?
yeah, that's a really good question. I think when I think about the biggest challenge that we face is just understanding that in order to create a really niche school, in order to have a space that really does cater to this twice exceptional brain, the ASD or neurodiverse on some level, and the at or above grade level child. As we're trying to maintain the integrity of our program, what that means, unfortunately, is that you do have to say no to some
Yeah,
kiddos. And to some families that you really care for and want the best for. And because we are, again, maintaining that integrity of a very small niche population, that does mean that we can't all encompassing. So sometimes people
sure.
will Google, schools for autism in Charlotte, and then we come to find out that there's more significant need, and the student might need PT and OT to be provided by the school. And at our size, we just can't do
Right.
that.
That's
And
not
so
something you do.
yeah, and so I
Yeah,
would say that that's always heartbreaking, because there's just not a lot of great options, which is we had a family that lived in Winston-Salem and we're in Charlotte, and they came and lived in Charlotte during the week with a family member so that the child could come to school here. And
wow.
the stories of sacrifice that our families go through and, you know, uh, do in order to have their kids here, because there's not a ton of places like that. It's difficult to swallow sometimes, because you want to be able to help all families and all children. And at the same time, if we do that, then we lose the integrity
And you
of
lose.
the kids that we can and do serve really well. And so I would say that that's, as someone who cares greatly for all children, that's difficult. And also, I know that when I think about the kids that walk through this school building that I know we can serve really well, I always think about them when I have to say no.
Right. I mean, listen, it's always a give and take, and I think part of the reason why you guys have done such a great job is because you're a small school and because you're really able to focus on the students who are in your school and give them the services and the attention they need, and that's an amazing thing for those students. But I want to ask you, obviously. Like you said, in a small school, the relationship between the students and their teachers and their and the staff members, I'm sure is very, very close and very, very strong. And I imagine that, like you said before, you have contact with your alumni, which is great. When a student graduates your school, when a student finishes eighth grade, is there if you could give them a wish or a blessing, something that you hope that each of your students is able to leave the Epiphany School being able to do or having accomplished, is there something that comes to mind that you really hope for all of your students?
Yeah, and I get kind of emotional when I think about this, but I always just hope that they know that we love them so much, like as they're continuing on to their next place. It's really hard to see our
Uh,
kids fly, but that's what we want for them. And we're here cheering them on as they do that. It's
that's
always really difficult, because you are a family, you love them so much. And we just love hearing their stories though.
That's really special. I guess failing them and keeping them another year is not an option. But
We've been asked that before. Yeah,
you know,
we've been asked that. We've been asked that.
no.
Not necessarily a great option, but one for sure.
Sometimes we joke about that here. When our students graduate, it's the parents will say like, "We're so sorry to not be involved with you anymore." So I said, "Oh, we can make that happen. No
Right.
problem. No, that math class. No. Look,
Absolutely.
in all seriousness, I can tell, just by the way you describe your relationship with your students and their families, I can tell how much they each mean to you, and that's really, I think, something so special from the student side and their families for certain, but I think also from the teacher and the staff side also, I'm sure it really is a family. And the good news is, even once students leave and graduate, as we know from our own experiences, families are always related. They're always connected, and
Yep.
that's something we always take with us.
Beautifully
Cassie,
said.
for anybody who wants to find out more information about the Epiphany School, either because they're in the North Carolina area and this is potentially a service that they need, or if they want to come check out what you're doing, so maybe for their own schools back home, what's the best way for other people to find out more information about you guys?
Yeah, our website is definitely the best resource for folks. So it's Google the Epiphany School of Charlotte, and we are the one at the top. And we have a admissions director who you would contact. There's an inquire button,
Okay.
and yeah, that would be the best way to find out more.
Wonderful. Cassie Jones, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It was really special to hear about the amazing work you and your staff are doing at the Epiphany School in Charlotte, North Carolina. And your students, I hope they and their families know how fortunate and lucky they are. I know I want to come visit you guys and see this actually happening. I think a trip to Charlotte is coming up in the future. Um,
Come
but but
on.
uh, but
No,
but
and we feel the exact same way about our students and our families. We feel
yeah,
so grateful.
I can tell.
We have a great team. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is a special thing. So Cassie, thank you so much for being with us today and for talking with me. And for those people who want to find out more about Cassie's school, the Epiphany School, please check out the website. And if you'd like to find out more about our podcast, please visit us at www.edutogether.org. It was great to have you with us, and look forward to seeing everybody back for the next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.